The moment Isabella realized the bride walking down the aisle was her own sister, her heart didn't just break, it shattered beyond repair. The wedding flowers were the same ones she had chosen. The music was the same melody she had dreamed about. Even the groom was the man who had promised to love her forever. But tonight, she wasn't the bride. She was the scandal no one wanted to mention. Hidden behind a pillar, she watched her entire future being stolen in front of hundreds of guests. And just when she thought humiliation was the worst fate she could suffer, a stranger stepped out of the shadows, a man powerful enough to change her destiny with a single sentence, "Then marry me instead." The applause thundered through the cathedral as Isabella's sister reached the altar. Every clap felt like a slap across Isabella's face. She couldn't move. Her body felt numb, frozen between disbelief and heartbreak. Just yesterday, she had still been the bride. The engagement ring was still on her finger. The promises were still echoing in her mind. But this morning, she had received a short letter. "I'm sorry, this marriage cannot happen." No explanation, no meeting, no closure. And now he was marrying her sister. Her own parents sat proudly in the front row, smiling as if nothing was wrong. As if Isabella had never existed. A quiet sob escaped her lips before she could stop it. She turned and rushed out of the cathedral, desperate to escape before anyone noticed her. The hallway outside was empty and silent. For a moment, she thought she could finally breathe. "Miss Isabella." She froze instantly. Slowly, she turned around. A man stood at the end of the corridor, tall and composed, dressed in black formal attire that radiated authority. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't pitying her either. His expression was calm, almost certain, as if he had been expecting this moment. "I believe," he said gently, walking toward her. "You were supposed to be the bride today." Her chest tightened. "Who are you?" Instead of answering immediately, he removed a pair of black gloves with deliberate elegance. "My name is Alexander Ravenscroft." A pause. "The Duke of the North." Isabella's breath caught. Everyone in the kingdom knew that name. A man rumored to be cold, ruthless, and untouchable. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. His eyes softened, just slightly. "I came here for you." Her heart skipped. "Why?" And then he said the words that would change her life forever. "Because if he does not want you, then marry me instead." Silence filled the corridor. Isabella stared at him, certain she had misunderstood. "You don't even know me." Alexander stepped closer. His voice dropped, low and steady. "I know enough." A strange warmth spread through her chest, the first feeling that wasn't pain all day. But confusion still lingered. Why would a duke marry someone who was just humiliated in front of everyone? For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Not pity, not obligation, something deeper. "Because," he said quietly, "you were never meant to belong to them." A distant sound of wedding bells echoed through the cathedral, and Isabella realized her life was about to change in ways she could never imagine. 10 minutes ago, Isabella had been a woman with nothing left. No fiancé, no dignity, no future. And now when a duke was asking her to marry him, the absurdity of it made her almost laugh. "This isn't funny," she said, her voice trembling despite her effort to stay calm. "If this is some kind of joke..." "It isn't." Alexander's answer came immediately. Firm, certain. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small velvet box. When he opened it, a ring rested inside. Elegant, flawless, unmistakably expensive. Isabella's breath caught. "You came prepared?" she whispered. "Yes." Her heart pounded louder. "Why me?" For a moment, he didn't answer. The silence stretched long enough for doubt to creep back into her chest. Then he spoke. "Because you are standing here alone," he said, "while the people who should have protected you chose convenience instead." His words hit deeper than she expected. No one had ever acknowledged her pain so directly. "But marriage isn't charity," she said quietly. "You don't even know what kind of person I am." Alexander stepped closer, his presence warm yet overwhelming. "I know you didn't deserve what happened today." Her throat tightened again. "And I know," he continued, softer now, "that if you walk out of this building alone, they will define the rest of your life." He was right. Society would remember her as the woman abandoned at the altar. The unwanted daughter, the embarrassing scandal. Tears blurred her vision. "And if I marry you?" she asked. His gaze didn't waver. "Then you become Duchess Ravenscroft." The title alone carried power strong enough to silence anyone who dared mock her, but there was something else in his eyes. Something personal, almost protective. "What do you gain from this?" she asked carefully. A faint pause. Then he answered with honesty she didn't expect. "Peace of mind." Confusion crossed her face. Before she could ask more, voices echoed from the cathedral entrance. Guests beginning to move toward the reception hall. Time was running out. Alexander held out his hand. "No pressure," he said calmly. "If you refuse, I will escort you home safely and you will never see me again." That option should have been comforting. Instead, it felt terrifying, because for the first time that day, someone was offering her a future. Her heart pounded violently as she stared at his hand. This was madness. Impulsive, dangerous, but staying the same was worse. Slowly, hesitantly, she placed her hand in his. Alexander's fingers closed around hers with quiet certainty. "Very well," he said. And with those words, Isabella's old life ended. An hour later, Isabella walked back into the same cathedral she had fled. But this time she wasn't alone. Her heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. Everything felt unreal. The guests who had just celebrated another wedding were still gathered inside, laughing, drinking, enjoying the scandal of the night. None of them were prepared for what was about to happen. Alexander's hand rested gently at the small of her back, steadying her as they entered together. The moment people noticed them, conversation stopped. Whispers spread instantly. "Is that Isabella? Who is the man with her? Wait, isn't that—" Shock rippled through the crowd like a wave. Because the man beside her wasn't just anyone. It was the Duke of Ravenscroft, one of the most powerful men in the kingdom. At the front of the hall, her parents turned around, their faces drained of color. Her sister's expression twisted in disbelief. And the groom, the man who had abandoned her, looked like he had seen a ghost. Alexander didn't slow his steps, didn't hesitate. He walked her straight down the aisle, the same aisle she was supposed to walk earlier that day. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Gasps echoed through the cathedral. When they reached the altar, Alexander turned to the stunned priest. "We will be married now," he said calmly. The priest blinked repeatedly. "Your Grace, this is highly irregular. I will take responsibility." The authority in his voice left no room for argument. Silence fell. All eyes turned to Isabella. This was the moment she could still run, still escape. But Alexander leaned slightly closer and murmured so only she could hear, "You can stop this anytime." Instead, she shook her head. "No," she whispered. For the first time that night, she chose her own fate. The ceremony began. Her hands trembled as Alexander slid the ring onto her finger. But when it was her turn, she noticed something unexpected. His fingers were shaking too. That realization sent a strange warmth through her chest. When the priest finally declared, "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the cathedral exploded into chaos. Voices shouted. Questions flew. Her mother stood up abruptly. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded. Alexander turned slowly, his arm wrapping around Isabella's waist with unmistakable possession. His expression turned cold, terrifyingly cold. "The meaning," he said, "is simple." He looked directly at her family. "She is no longer yours to mistreat." A heavy silence followed. Then he lowered his gaze to Isabella, and for the first time, he smiled. A small, genuine smile meant only for her. "Come, my Duchess," he said softly. And just like that, the girl who had been abandoned became the most powerful woman in the room. Isabella thought the hardest part would be marrying a stranger. She was wrong. The hardest part was living with one. The Ravenscroft estate was larger than anything she had ever seen. Towering marble halls, endless corridors, and servants who bowed every time she passed. Now she was the Duchess, a title powerful enough to silence society. Yet strangely, she had never felt more uncertain. Alexander had been respectful since the ceremony. Kind even, but distant. That first night, he escorted her to a magnificent bedroom. "This will be yours," he said calmly. "Yours, not ours." The word didn't escape her notice. "And you?" she asked carefully. "My room is across the hall." A flicker of confusion crossed her face. "We won't share?" His expression softened slightly, as if he anticipated the question. "Our marriage happened quickly," he said. "You deserve time to adjust without pressure." Relief washed through her, followed immediately by something unexpected. Disappointment. She didn't understand why. "Rest," he added gently. "You've been through enough today." Then he left. The door closed quietly behind him. and Isabella realized her husband was treating her like something fragile, something precious, something he was afraid to break. Days passed. Alexander was rarely home, busy with ducal affairs, military matters, and political meetings. But every detail of her comfort had been arranged perfectly. Her favorite tea appeared each morning. New dresses arrived tailored exactly to her measurements. Books she once mentioned casually were placed in her sitting room. It was as if someone knew her habits intimately. One afternoon, while walking through the garden, she overheard two maids whispering. The Duke personally approved every item for her grace. He even rejected half the dresses because he said they didn't suit her. Isabella stopped walking. Her heart skipped. Why would he care that much? That night, when Alexander returned, she finally asked, "Why did you marry me?" He paused while removing his gloves. "For the reason I told you. That you wanted peace of mind?" "Yes." She stepped closer, searching his face. "That isn't the whole truth." Silence lingered between them. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke quietly. "Some truths," he said, "are better told at the right time." Her chest tightened. "What truth?" His eyes met hers, and for a brief second, she saw something raw there. Something emotional, something deeply personal. "You'll know soon enough," he said. Then he gently touched her shoulder. The first intentional contact since their wedding. The warmth of his hand lingered long after he walked away, and that night, Isabella began to wonder if her husband was truly a stranger at all. The first time Isabella realized her husband could be dangerous was the night he almost killed someone for her. It started like any ordinary evening. The estate was quiet, the sky painted with soft shades of gold as the sun disappeared beyond the hills. Isabella had decided to walk through the rose garden alone, needing fresh air after a long day indoors. For the first time since the wedding, she felt peaceful, until she heard footsteps behind her. Fast, heavy, wrong. Before she could turn around, a rough hand grabbed her arm. "Don't scream!" a man's voice hissed near her ear. Panic exploded in her chest. Another figure appeared from the shadows. "Kidnappers!" Her mind went blank with fear. "Move," one of them ordered, tightening his grip painfully. But before they could drag her away, a sharp crack echoed through the garden. The man holding her suddenly collapsed. Blood spread across the gravel path. Isabella froze. Alexander stood several feet away, gun still raised, his expression darker than she had ever seen. Terrifying, cold, murderous. The second attacker lunged toward her in desperation. He never reached her. Alexander moved faster than she thought possible, striking the man with brutal precision before slamming him to the ground. Within seconds, it was over. The silence afterward felt deafening. Isabella's heart pounded violently as Alexander turned toward her. The fury in his eyes vanished instantly, replaced by something else. Fear. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, voice tight. She shook her head, still shaking. I don't think so." He reached her in 2 strides, hands gripping her shoulders as his eyes scanned her frantically for injuries. His composure was gone, completely gone. "You shouldn't have been alone," he said hoarsely. "I told them never to leave you without guards." His hands trembled. That shocked her more than the attack itself. "I'm okay," she whispered. For a moment, he just stared at her, as if confirming she was real. Then suddenly, he pulled her into his arms. The embrace was tight, protective, almost desperate. Isabella froze in surprise. She could feel his heartbeat racing against her cheek. "You scared me," he murmured quietly. Her breath caught. A powerful Duke, admitting fear because of her. And in that moment, she realized something undeniable. This marriage might have started as an arrangement, but her husband's feelings were not fake at all. Isabella couldn't sleep that night, because she could still feel her husband's arms around her. The warmth, the urgency, the fear in his voice. None of it felt like the reaction of a man protecting a political wife. It felt personal, deeply personal, which only made her confusion worse. The next morning, Alexander ordered a full security lockdown of the estate. Guards doubled. Servants questioned. No one was allowed near Isabella without approval. By afternoon, she found him in his study, speaking with his advisor in a low, controlled voice. "This wasn't random," Alexander was saying. Someone knew her routine. Isabella stepped inside. Both men immediately stopped talking. Her stomach tightened. "What's going on?" she asked. Alexander dismissed the advisor with a glance. When they were alone, he walked toward her slowly. "I need to tell you something," he said. The seriousness in his tone made her pulse quicken. "Those men weren't targeting you because you're my wife." A cold chill ran through her. "Then why?" His jaw tightened slightly. "Because of who you are." Confusion flooded her face. "I'm nobody." "No," he said quietly. "You were made to believe that." He walked to his desk and opened a drawer, pulling out an old document sealed with wax. He handed it to her. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a birth record, her name, her mother's name, and a title she had never seen before. Lady Isabella Laurent, heir to the House of Laurent. Her breath stopped. "That's impossible," she whispered. "My mother was just a governess," Alexander finished gently. "That's what they told you." Her mind spun. "My mother was a noble?" "Yes. And the Laurent family was destroyed years ago," he continued. "Their estate seized, their influence erased." She looked up at him, shock flooding her chest. "Why are you telling me this?" His expression softened. "Because the attack last night confirms what I suspected." Her voice barely came out. "What?" "You were never meant to survive." The words hit like ice water. Silence filled the room. Her thoughts raced wildly. Why would anyone care about me? "I've done nothing." Alexander stepped closer. "Because you are the last legitimate heir to a powerful bloodline." Her knees felt weak. "But how do you know all this?" That question lingered heavily between them. For a moment, he hesitated, which told her everything. "You already knew," she whispered. His eyes met hers, and then he said the words that changed everything. "I've known who you were since you were a child." Her heart skipped violently. "What?" His voice dropped softer. "I've been watching over you for years." The world tilted beneath her feet. Her husband wasn't a stranger. He never had been. The most shocking part wasn't that Alexander knew her past. It was that he had known her, personally, for years. "I don't understand," Isabella whispered, her voice unsteady. "We've never met before." Alexander watched her quietly for a long moment. Then he said something that made her heart stop. "You saved my life once." Her brows furrowed in confusion. "When?" "You were 10, he said softly. The memory didn't come immediately, but as he spoke, fragments began surfacing. Rain, mud, a boy lying injured near the roadside outside her childhood village. She had been gathering herbs with her mother that day. The boy had been bleeding badly, unconscious, dressed in torn but expensive clothing. Bandits, her mother had guessed. They took him home, hid him, treated his wounds for days, before he finally woke. "You," Isabella breathed. Alexander nodded slightly. "You gave me water when I couldn't even lift my head," he said. "You kept talking to me so I wouldn't lose consciousness." Her chest tightened. "I thought you were just a traveler." "I was the heir to the Ravenscroft Duchy," he replied calmly. Shock rippled through her again. "That was you?" "Yes." Silence filled the study. Memories flooded her now. A quiet boy with dark hair, sharp eyes, a serious expression even at that age. He had stayed with them nearly 2 weeks before his guards found him. And when he left, he had promised something. Her heart skipped. "You said," she murmured slowly. Alexander finished the sentence for her. "I said I would repay you someday." Emotion rose unexpectedly in her chest. "You were just a child." "So were you," he said. His voice softened. "But you treated me with more kindness than most adults ever have." She looked down, overwhelmed. "All these years, you remembered?" "I never forgot," he answered quietly. Her throat tightened again. "That's why you married me?" Part of her feared the answer, that this was just debt, obligation. But Alexander shook his head slightly. "At first, I intended only to protect you from the shadows," he admitted. Her pulse quickened. "At first?" His eyes met hers. Something vulnerable flickered there. "But the longer I watched you grow," he continued, "the more I realized." He stopped, as if choosing his words carefully, realizing the weight of them. "What?" she whispered. His voice dropped almost to a confession. "I wasn't protecting you out of duty anymore." Her heart pounded violently. "Then why?" A long silence passed, and then, "Because you became the most important person in my life." The world seemed to stand still. Before she could react, Alexander reached up and gently brushed a strand of hair away from her face. The touch was careful, reverent, as if she were something precious. And for the first time since their marriage, Isabella felt the undeniable truth. Her husband hadn't chosen her out of convenience. He had chosen her. Long ago, the last people Isabella expected to see again arrived at her doorstep 3 days later. Her parents and her sister. They stood in the grand entrance hall of the Ravenscroft estate, dressed elegantly as if nothing had ever happened, as if they hadn't abandoned her, as if they hadn't let her humiliation become entertainment for society. Isabella felt her chest tighten. "Why are they here?" she asked quietly to the butler. "His Grace allowed the meeting," the man replied respectfully. Allowed? That meant Alexander knew. Before she could process that thought, her mother rushed forward dramatically. "Isabella, my dear," she exclaimed, grabbing her hands. "We were so worried about you." The sudden affection felt foreign, fake. Her father stepped closer, forcing a polite smile. "You made quite an unexpected decision." Unexpected. That was one way to describe marrying a duke hours after being betrayed. Her sister remained silent, but her eyes scanned Isabella's jewelry, her dress, the estate surroundings. Jealousy was obvious. "We came," her father continued, "to discuss family matters." A cold voice spoke behind them. What family matters would that be? Alexander. He entered the hall with calm authority, his presence instantly shifting the atmosphere. Everyone straightened. Even her father looked slightly nervous. Alexander's gaze moved from one face to another before settling beside Isabella. Without hesitation, he placed his hand at her back. A silent claim. "She is my wife now," he said. "You may speak." Her mother cleared her throat. "Well, now that Isabella has married into such a prestigious household, it's only natural that family relations should improve." Isabella blinked. "Improve?" Her father nodded eagerly. "We believe it would be appropriate to restore certain financial arrangements." There it was. Money, status, benefit. Not love, not apology. Alexander's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "You neglected her for years," he said calmly. "Now you remember she is family?" Her father stiffened. "You must understand, Your Grace. Circumstances were complicated." "No," Alexander interrupted softly. "They were convenient." Silence slammed into the room. Her mother tried again, desperation creeping in. "We raised her. You exploited her inheritance." The words hit like thunder. Isabella froze. "My what?" Alexander's gaze shifted to her gently. "They used the Laurent estate funds left in trust for you," he explained. "Every coin that should have secured your future." Shock flooded her body. Her parents' faces turned pale. "That's not," her father began. Alexander's eyes hardened. "I have the records." Coldly, with interest. Her father's composure cracked. "You can't do that." Alexander's gaze turned terrifying. "I already have." The power in his voice left no doubt. And in that moment, Isabella realized something profound. For the first time in her life, someone was fighting for her. The truth hung heavy in the air. Betrayal layered upon betrayal. Her voice trembled. "You took what my mother left me?" Her mother's silence was answer enough. Pain stabbed through Isabella's chest. But before she could crumble, Alexander's arm tightened slightly around her. Protective, steady. "They will repay every debt," he said. The night Isabella learned her mother hadn't died naturally, something inside her changed forever. It began with a letter. Alexander handed it to her in his study, his expression unusually serious. "This was recovered from the Laurent estate archives," he said quietly. "I believe you should read it." Her fingers trembled as she opened the aged envelope. The handwriting was familiar. Her mother's. "If anything happens to me, Isabella must never know the truth until she is safe. They are watching us. They want the Laurent bloodline erased. If I cannot protect her, someone else must." Her breath caught painfully. "What does this mean?" she whispered. Alexander hesitated, and that hesitation told her everything. "My mother didn't just get sick. Did she?" she asked. His silence was confirmation. The room felt suddenly smaller. "She was poisoned," he said gently. The words shattered the last piece of innocence she had left. "No," her voice broke. "That's not possible." Alexander stepped closer. "The official cause was illness," he continued, "but evidence suggests deliberate exposure over time." Tears blurred her vision. Why would anyone do that? Because your mother refused to surrender. Control of the Laurent. Inheritance, he replied. And because you existed. Her knees weakened. I was just a child. You were the heir, he corrected softly. The realization hit like ice. Someone had wanted her family destroyed. Her mother dead. Her existence erased. Fear crawled up her spine. Are they still alive? She asked. Alexander's jaw tightened. Yes. A heavy silence followed. And now, he added, they know where you are. Her heart pounded violently. That attack in the garden was a warning, he said. A chill spread through her chest. She looked up at him. Am I putting you in danger? The question came out small, almost guilty. Alexander's expression changed instantly. He reached out, lifting her chin gently so she would meet his eyes. You are not a burden, he said firmly. Emotion surged in his voice, stronger than she had ever heard. You are my wife. The words carried weight. Promise, possession, protection. If anyone tries to harm you again, he continued quietly, they will discover exactly how dangerous I can be. A shiver ran through her. Not fear, security. For the first time since learning the truth. She didn't feel alone, but deep down, a new realization formed. This wasn't over. It was only beginning. And whoever destroyed her family would come back for her. The moment Alexander realized he loved her was the moment he thought she was dying. It happened during what was supposed to be a safe journey. He had insisted Isabella accompany him to a neighboring estate. A short trip, heavily guarded, carefully planned. Nothing should have gone wrong. But enemies didn't follow rules. The attack came suddenly. An explosion shattered the front carriage, sending horses into chaos. Guards shouted. Smoke filled the air. Alexander's instincts kicked in immediately. Stay inside, he ordered Isabella as he stepped out to assess the situation. But before he could reach her door, a masked figure appeared from the smoke. A blade flashed. Alexander turned sharply, but he was 1 second too late. The attacker lunged past him, straight toward the carriage, toward Isabella. A scream tore from his throat. No. By the time he reached her, the attacker had already fled into the chaos, and Isabella was slumped against the seat, blood spreading across her dress. For a moment, the world stopped. Alexander's mind went blank. Isabella, he said, voice shaking for the first time in years. Look at me. Her eyes fluttered weakly. I'm okay, she whispered faintly. She wasn't. The knife wound was deep. Too deep. Fear, unlike anything he had ever felt, ripped through him. Not battle fear, not political fear, personal terror. Stay with me, he ordered hoarsely, pressing his hand over the wound to stop the bleeding. Do you hear me? Stay with me. Her fingers weakly grasped his sleeve. You're shaking, she murmured. He hadn't even realized. I'm not, he lied, but his hands trembled violently. For the first time in his life, Alexander Ravenscroft felt helpless. I never thanked you, she whispered. His chest tightened painfully. For what? For saving me. That day in the cathedral. Emotions surged through him so strongly it hurt. You don't need to thank me, he said roughly. You just need to live. Her lips curved faintly. I'm glad. It was you. Something inside him broke. No, he said, voice cracking. You are not leaving me. Do you understand? I forbid it. Tears blurred his vision, something he hadn't experienced since childhood. I love you, he said suddenly, the words tearing out of him without control. So you are not allowed to die. Her eyes widened slightly. Shock, softness, emotion. And then they began to close. Panic exploded in his chest. Isabella! He pulled her closer, desperation replacing every ounce of composure he had ever possessed. At that moment, the most powerful duke in the kingdom wasn't a ruler. He was just a man, begging fate not to take the woman he loved. The longest night Alexander ever lived was the night he didn't know if his wife would survive until morning. The estate doctors worked frantically. Blood stained their hands. Orders flew through the corridor. More bandages. Hold the pressure! Her pulse is dropping. Alexander stood just outside the room, fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. He had faced wars, political assassinations, death threats, none of it compared to this helplessness. A physician finally stepped out. Your Grace. Alexander's voice came out sharp. Tell me she's alive. The doctor hesitated. The wound was deep. She lost a significant amount of blood. We've done everything we can, but the next few hours will decide her fate. The words felt like a blade through his chest. Everything we can. Not enough. He pushed past them and entered the room. Isabella lay pale against the sheets, breathing shallowly, looking impossibly fragile. For a moment, he couldn't move. This woman, the one who had changed his life, looked like she might disappear at any second. Slowly, he sat beside her and took her hand. It felt cold. Fear surged violently through him again. "You're not allowed to leave me," he murmured, voice rough. "You promised?" She didn't respond. Machines ticked softly. Time crawled. Hours passed. Servants came and went quietly, but Alexander never moved from her side. At some point during the night, his composure finally cracked. "I should have protected you better," he whispered, pressing her hand against his forehead. "This is my fault." Emotion choked his throat. "I spent years making sure you were safe, and the moment you became mine, I failed." A tear slipped down his face. He didn't even notice. "I never told you the truth," he continued quietly. "Not all of it." His voice trembled. "I didn't just marry you to protect you. I married you because I couldn't stand watching another man have you." Silence filled the room. "You were always mine in my heart," he confessed softly. "Even before you knew my name." A faint movement interrupted his words. His head snapped up. Isabella's fingers twitched. His breath stopped. "Isabella?" he whispered urgently. Her eyelids fluttered weakly. Then, slowly, she opened her eyes. Relief crashed through him so violently it almost hurt. "You're awake," he breathed. Her voice was barely audible. "You're crying." He let out a broken laugh. "Yes," he admitted, "because you terrified me." Her lips curved faintly despite the weakness. "I heard you," she whispered. His heart skipped. "Heard what?" Her eyes softened. "When you said, 'You love me.'" The world seemed to stand still. And in that moment, Alexander realized he would trade everything he owned, just to see her open her eyes again. The moment Isabella realized who wanted her dead, she understood this was never just about inheritance. It was about power, control, and revenge. Recovery was slow, painful, but she was alive. And every morning she woke up. Alexander was there, sometimes reading reports, sometimes just watching her breathe, as if he still couldn't believe she survived. "You should rest," she murmured one afternoon when she noticed the exhaustion under his eyes. "I will," he said calmly. "When you are fully recovered?" She smiled faintly. "You're impossible. And you married me anyway," he replied softly. Warmth spread through her chest. But the peace didn't last. 3 weeks later, Alexander entered her room with a sealed document in his hand. His expression was colder than she had seen since the attack. "We found who ordered it," he said. Her heart skipped. "Who?" He hesitated, not out of doubt, but concern for her reaction. Then he handed her the file. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside was a name, a title, a face she recognized from childhood gatherings long ago. Lord Cedric Laurent. Her breath stopped. "My uncle?" Alexander nodded once. "He is the last surviving brother of your mother," he said, "and the man who seized control of the Laurent estate after her death." Shock rippled through her body. "But he helped raise me for years." "Yes," Alexander said quietly, "until you became inconvenient." Cold realization spread through her chest. "He killed my mother," she whispered. "We have evidence suggesting he ordered the poisoning," Alexander confirmed. Her hands shook violently. Memories flashed. Her uncle's forced kindness, his controlling behavior, the way he insisted she remain out of public attention. He wasn't protecting her. He was hiding her, waiting for the right moment to eliminate her permanently. Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness this time, from rage. "He tried to kill me," she said. "Yes." Silence filled the room. Then she looked up at her husband. For the first time, there was steel in her voice. "What are we going to do?" A slow, dangerous calm spread across Alexander's face. "We," he said quietly, "are going to take back everything that belongs to you." A shiver ran down her spine. Not fear, anticipation. "For years," he continued, "he believed you were powerless." His eyes met hers. "Let's show him how wrong he was." And in that moment, Isabella stopped being a victim. She became a force. The day Isabella walked into the royal court, the man who tried to erase her existence finally realized his mistake. The grand hall was filled with nobles, officials, and political elites from across the kingdom. Whispers echoed everywhere, because rumors had already spread. The lost Laurent heir was alive, and she had returned. Isabella's heart pounded as she stood beside Alexander at the entrance. Her gown shimmered with quiet elegance, not overly extravagant, but undeniably regal. For the first time in her life, she looked like what she truly was, a noblewoman, an heir. Alexander leaned slightly closer. "Nervous?" he asked softly. "A little," she admitted. His hand brushed against hers, warm and steady. "I'm right here." The simple words calmed her more than anything else. When they stepped forward together, the entire hall turned to look. Gasps spread instantly, because the resemblance to her mother was undeniable. At the far end of the chamber, Lord Cedric Laurent stood frozen. Shock, fear, disbelief, all visible on his face. For years he had believed she was weak, unimportant, easy to eliminate. But now, she stood beside the most powerful duke in the kingdom, untouchable. The king's advisor stepped forward. "Lady Isabella Laurent," he announced, voice echoing through the hall. "You claim rightful inheritance of House Laurent. Do you present evidence?" Her throat tightened slightly, but Alexander's presence beside her gave her strength. She stepped forward. "Yes," she said clearly. Documents were presented, witness testimonies, financial records, proof after proof dismantling Cedric's control. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Cedric's composure cracked. "This is manipulation," he shouted. "She's being used by Ravenscroft." Alexander's expression turned dangerously calm. "The evidence speaks for itself," he said coldly. Cedric's eyes snapped toward Isabella. Hatred burned there. "You should have died with your mother," he spat. Gasps echoed across the hall. The confession hung heavy in the air. Isabella felt her chest tighten. But instead of fear, something new rose inside her. Strength. She lifted her chin. "You failed," she said quietly. Silence fell. Cedric froze. "You tried to erase me," she continued, voice steady. "But I'm still here." Alexander's hand rested at her back again. Supportive, proud, protective. And for the first time, Cedric looked afraid, because the girl he thought he could destroy had become a woman he couldn't control. The most dangerous enemy is the one who has nothing left to lose. Cedric Laurent realized his defeat the moment the council announced the investigation would proceed. His power was slipping, his crimes were surfacing, his control over the Laurent fortune was ending, and desperate men made reckless decisions. The attack happened as Isabella and Alexander were leaving the royal court. Crowds filled the courtyard. Guards surrounded them. Everything looked secure, until a single figure broke through the chaos. Cedric, his face twisted with fury and desperation. Before anyone could react, he pulled a concealed pistol. Time seemed to slow. Alexander saw the weapon first. His instincts screamed. He moved without thinking. "Isabella!" The gunshot echoed across the courtyard. A sharp impact hit his shoulder as he shoved her aside. Pain exploded through his body, but he didn't fall. Guards tackled Cedric to the ground seconds later. But Alexander barely noticed. His entire focus was on her. "Are you hurt?" he demanded urgently. Isabella stared at him in shock. "You're bleeding." "It's nothing," he said immediately. It wasn't. Blood soaked through his coat rapidly. Fear surged through her chest. "You were shot because of me," she whispered, panic rising. Alexander reached up with his uninjured arm and cupped her face. His eyes were intense. "Certain, I would take 1,000 bullets for you," he said quietly. Emotion hit her so strongly it hurt. "You're my wife." His voice softened further. "My heart." Tears blurred her vision. For so long, she had believed she was unwanted, replaceable, disposable. But this man had risked everything for her without hesitation. "Why?" she whispered. Alexander leaned his forehead gently against hers despite the chaos around them. "Because I love you," he said. "Not out of debt, not out of obligation." His thumb brushed her cheek tenderly. "I love you because you are you." Her chest broke open with emotion. "I was alone for so long," she whispered. "You're not alone anymore," he said. The certainty in his voice wrapped around her like warmth. And in that moment, she realized something profound. No matter what happened next, She had already found her home. The life Isabella thought had been destroyed turned out to be the one that led her to happiness. 3 months later, the trial ended with a verdict that shook the entire kingdom. Cédric Laurent was found guilty of fraud, attempted murder, and conspiracy in the death of Isabella's mother. His titles were stripped, his property seized, his influence erased. Justice finally existed, and for the first time since childhood, Isabella felt free. The Laurent estate, her true inheritance, was officially returned to her name. But what mattered most wasn't the wealth, it was the closure. Standing on the balcony of the Ravenscroft estate, she watched the sunset paint the sky in gold and crimson, arms wrapped gently around her waist from behind. She didn't need to turn to know it was Alexander. "You're quiet," he murmured near her ear. "Just thinking," she said softly. "About? How strange life is." He rested his chin lightly against her shoulder. "Strange?" She nodded. "A few months ago, I thought my life was over. I lost everything in one day." His arms tightened slightly. "You gained better things," he said. She smiled. "Yes." Silence settled comfortably between them. Then she asked the question that had lingered in her heart. "If that wedding hadn't happened, would you still have come for me?" Alexander didn't hesitate. "Yes." She blinked in surprise. "Really?" "I was already planning to," he admitted. "I just didn't expect fate to give me an excuse so dramatic." She turned in his arms to face him. His expression was softer than she had ever seen. "For years," he continued quietly, "I watched you from a distance because I wanted you to choose your own life." His hand lifted to cup her cheek. "But the moment I saw you standing alone in that cathedral, I couldn't wait anymore." Emotion filled her chest. "You changed my destiny," she whispered. Alexander shook his head gently. "No," he said. "You changed mine first." He leaned down, pressing his forehead against hers. "You saved me when we were children," he murmured. "And you saved me again by loving me." Tears shimmered in her eyes, but they were happy ones. "I love you," she said. The words felt natural, certain, true. Alexander's lips curved into the rare smile meant only for her. "I love you more than anything in this world." Then he kissed her. Soft, warm, full of promises for the future. As the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, Isabella realized something she had never understood before. Sometimes, the worst day of your life is actually the beginning of your greatest destiny.